Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about Chelsea against Aston Villa, a draw in what was a pretty important game, coming off one of the worst results that Chelsea have probably ever had in the Premier League. I can't even talk about the team it was against. I can't even talk about the score because quite frankly, it hurts a bit too much. But I wanted to get into this game today and I wanted to talk to you guys all about the draw, which basically should have been a win. And in a way, this game was emblematic of our season so far. A lot of missed chances, conceding poor goals, overall coming in to the half-time break and not looking that good. But then there's also some weird things that happen. A tactical change from Mauricio Pochettino actually affects the game. The boys come out fighting in the second half. And if you stick around to the end of this video, I'm going to give you my verdict on what I think we should do with Mauricio Pochettino. But before we get into that, and before we talk about the game as a whole, we've got to talk about the lineups. So let's get right into that. So it was a relatively standard lineup. And what I mean by that is basically we could only put out 11 players. That's how bad the injury situation has gone. And let's just say before we get into the actual team, we are fucked with injuries. We've had so many of them. And you could basically say we've got a starting 11 that are out injured. And the curse just continues to keep on going. Enzo is now out to the end of the season. And quite frankly, he looked like he could be injured for the entirety of the last 6-7 weeks. And maybe even before that. So it's a good thing. Get well soon, Enzo. But let's get into the lineup for this game against Villa. It was Petrovic, it was Cucurella, it was Thiago Silva and Badiashile in the middle. And then it was my boy, Trevor Chalobah on the right-hand side. Please don't sell him, Chelsea. Please don't. But we'll get into that in a second. Then it was the dream midfield pivot. I never thought I'd be saying this, but it is, of Caicedo and Gallagher. Those boys unbelievable together. And again, we'll get into those boys in more detail going forward. Then you've got Madueke on the right, Cole Palmer as a cam through the middle, as I really do think he is. Then you've got obviously the star man, the star boy who never disappoints in a Chelsea shirt with Misha. And then you've got Nicholas Jackson up top. And what I wanted to do first of all is call out 3 players within this team sheet. And they're the 3 players that basically we know are going to be gone in the summer. Those are Thiago Silva, a player who has been absolutely imperious for Chelsea and pretty much every club that he's ever been at. He's now 39 years old, nearly 40, still wants to carry on playing football, isn't anywhere near retiring, is our best defender by a country mile, falls out with Mauricio Pochettino, gets back into the team. His missus is calling him out and all the other players and the manager on Twitter, still making other tweets this week after the Arsenal result as well. And yet he still is the best player by an absolute mile that we have. And the overall thing that I really want to talk about here is these players are going to be gone. And how the hell do we replace them? How can you take one of the best defenders of all time, and you have to acknowledge that he is, in Thiago Silva, and replace him? I just don't know how we're going to do it. Then the other player that we have to talk about is Trevor Chalobah. Again, has basically been forced out in every opportunity. People just don't want him there at the club. You saw it in January, you saw it last summer. People were ready to offload him, ready to cash the balance in on pure profit of another academy player. But this guy is better than Disasi. You know, this guy is probably better than Badiashile as well. And yet we're still thinking about selling him so that we can buy more underperforming players. And I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. You see the option that he gave on the right-hand side. I really do think as a third choice right back and also basically as a DM and a centre half, there's not really any other options that are better than Trevor Chalobah. So again, if we do end up getting rid of him in the summer, it's just going to be a joke. And then also Conor Gallagher. A guy that, you know, I've been up and down on all season, but really we should just be all up on him. He's absolutely brilliant. He's all over the place. And actually, if you think about it, that defensive midfield role does actually suit him in that we can just have a complete engine room with him and Caicedo, man of the match Caicedo, by the way. But those two together, they just have so much energy and they do win the ball back up and down the pitch. You've just got to say they're absolutely brilliant. But to lose those 3 players in one summer and try and replace them with young, hungry players that are, you know, near enough the same quality, I think is impossible. And so, you know, I do think there are matches like this where the transfer staff, the guys at the top, the Stewarts and the Winstanleys, they've got to look at their overall transfer policy and they've got to go, do we really think that selling these players is the way to go? Because I just don't think it is. Now, the other player that I do want to call out in this little segment is talking about Badiashile, because again, another player that so many people have maligned this season, and I don't think he's been good enough. I was pretty open to selling him, to be honest with you, in the summer, because I thought he's been so average. Put him next to Thiago Silva, and he does look very, very good. And that just shows you how good Thiago Silva is. And, Badiashile steps up his game. Putting him together with Disasi, it just doesn't work. But those boys together is immense. But look, I'm really interested to see what you guys think. How the hell are we going to replace those three players? Because it does just seem like they're going to go. And on that, I am thinking about making a little video all about Chelsea's problems and how I personally would solve them in the summer. Doing a little bit of like if I was a football manager or if I was the director of football at Chelsea, and what would I do? Both up and down the club, at every level, management and then all the way down to the players. So if you want to see that, give this video a little thumbs up and I will make that video very, very soon. I've got it planned. I think I'm ready to release it. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. The next thing that I want to talk about is the finishing. Now, we've had so many games this season where we could have won basically 5-3, 4-3, 3-2. The goals are galore. We concede loads of goals, but we should have scored a lot more as well. And this was one of those games again where we just had so many chances, wasn't there? Let's just think about some of the more obvious ones. Jackson gets played through, a beautiful ball over the top. He is unfortunately offside, but what a finish from him. And he again proves people wrong in that he can do some decent finishes eventually, but unfortunately that was ruled offside, so that will never be recorded in the record books, unfortunately. But then, there's another opportunity for him, a header which hits, the very base of the post, and again it goes out. And you just, at this point, got to feel sorry for the geezer. He's absolutely trying his hardest. He just can't finish at all. He can't finish his dinner. And really, that is a sign, really, of our entire season, is that we just can't finish the goals. And if you don't finish those opportunities and you're still scoring a very good amount of goals, then something is either going wrong, or it's a bit of a lesson maybe for next season that we're going, yeah, maybe this is an opportunity that we will score lots more goals. And I think that would be one as well. And then the final one that I want to talk about as well is the Cole Palmer 1-on-1. Again, it's really interesting. He has these games where he's, mainly hot, but he also has some cold games, doesn't he? There was it the Borough FA Cup game where he missed 3 chances. And again, we were sort of saying, is he really a finisher? And then he goes and bags loads more goals, and basically we say he could be top goal scorer in the Premier League. Overall, Cole Palmer has had probably one of the best first seasons that we've ever seen at Chelsea Football Club, and so you have to just keep on sort of giving him the praise, and you have to say what an unbelievable player. But that was one that he should have slotted, wasn't it? And I don't think I'm going to dwell on it too much, but come on, Cole. You could have slotted that home and we would have probably won 4-2, because that was how good we were in the second half. We absolutely turned it on. And you have to say that second half performance was really decent, actually. And I mentioned 4-2 because we've got to talk about it. It's the incident, the disallowed goal, the last minute screamer that should have been the Chelsea win, but it wasn't, was it? And the thing for me that I get so wound up about is that we've had other, elements this season, other moments where we haven't got chances like that given. The one that springs to mind for me is a penalty incident that we should have got, really, where Sterling was through, ball over the top again, and gets pushed by a Brentford defender, and we don't get a penalty. And that is exactly the same amount of contact in this one. And you've just got to look at the incident itself. Badiashile, jostles in the far post. How many times have we seen defenders in the opposite way do that to some of our players, where they get a push and there's absolutely nothing given? And yet, a small push where the defender could have absolutely reacted but didn't. And then the ball gets in and Disasi scores a brilliant goal, does a wonderful celebration. The referee, by the way, standing right in front of it, able to see the whole entire thing, doesn't give it in real time, gives the goal. We go away celebrating. It's a wonderful comeback moment, a moment that means so much to the football club. And yet it's chalked off by VAR, by pausing the game, by slowing it down into the nth degree. And again, so many people have been up on Twitter, pundits have been saying this as well, in that VAR just isn't improving things. It's actually slowing the game down and actually making decisions just onerous and really, really slow. And I do think that was one of those ones that just didn't feel right. There's something you can't quite quantify it, and obviously, we're not all analysing every single rule of the rule book, but I just don't feel there was enough there to give the foul. And again, there were polls up by opposition fans. In fact, I'm going to show one now from an Arsenal fan where, the agnostic information was there in that they didn't think that it was a foul at all. So the writing's on the wall. It should have been a 3-2 win. And, there's so many games like that. The Man City 4-4, other games this season that we probably should have won, but we weren't. And I think this is another one of them. So, let's just call it a 4-3 in the Man City game and a 3-2 in this game because we deserved it. But we have to talk about next something that I am very fascinated about. It's about in-game management. It's about changes in the second half. Now, at halftime, we go in 2-0 down. The game could have absolutely slipped away from us, as so many games have this season. And you could have seen us losing 4-0 in that game if we hadn't come out and changed things. Now, I've really been critical of Mauricio Pochettino's in-game management. I've been very critical of his tactics because I really do feel that in most games, the tactics are the same. He hasn't really changed that much. All he's really done this season is play Colwell, as a left back, which is basically another centre back, and allowed Gusto or Reece James to bomb on. That's really the only tactical innovation beyond the 4-2-3-1 that we've seen this entire season. Now, after a team talk that seemed like it was a pretty serious one, and Thiago Silva, by all means, and what we're hearing at the moment, gave a very resounding chat and basically said to them to buck their ideas up at half-time. And I rate that. We need experienced players to do that, and I'm very glad that Thiago Silva is doing that, to be honest with you. It kind of proves that he's going to be an absolutely brilliant manager one day. But not only that, Mauricio Pochettino did change things, and the tactical setup was different in the second half. Cucurella is that inverted left back. He comes into midfield, and let's be honest, we look a completely different team. There have been so many examples, and I've said in so many of these videos this season, where Caicedo has been a lone midfielder, where Enzo and Gallagher basically want to be free eights. They want to push up and be as advanced as they possibly can, and they want to put pressure on defence. That just leaves Caicedo in no man's land, and there are so many examples of that. Look up and down this season, when we're trying to play out from the back, Caicedo is the only one. All the other team need to do is put two players on him, block him off, either push him or foul him, or just win the ball back, and then we're in big trouble. But what Mauricio Pochettino has done is look at modern managers like the Pep Guardiolas, like the Artetas of this world, and has looked at how they do things. And inverted wing-backs is not a new phenomenon. We've seen it for 3 or 4 years, really, at top level football now. And what he did in this game is he allowed Cucurella to go into that zone. And Cucurella, by the way, he just looked absolutely brilliant. And I think another player that we've just said, we didn't know whether he was good enough. We didn't know whether we had the Chelsea quality. He is by far the best left back at the football club now. Chilwell was nowhere near him at the moment. And so you have to say, absolutely brilliant performance by him. He comes into the midfield and we look so solid. Now, everyone is going to be talking about the tactics here and saying that the midfield dominance was the key thing here. And it absolutely was a very important moment to the tactical change, allowing Gallagher to sort of push forwards and really press, which he did so well. And in fact, it sort of really resulted in a lot of our goal opportunities. And really for the first goal as well, he was there winning the ball back and then also being fouled, immense from Conor, right? And having him high is brilliant. And pushing Cucurella into that area really did help him. But I really do want to talk about the wing areas and what this does for us. Now, we've seen this so often with Tuchel, with Conte, with our five-at-the-back systems. What we did, and actually people like Pep really praise us for this, is we said we were so wide, we were so close together vertically that they couldn't really play around us, and it created so many chances. Now this season what we've seen is a 4-2-3-1, and I'll show you this on screen now, is the 4-2-3-1, and basically what you're doing is you're doubling up on the wing areas. Now, what we don't do very well at Chelsea is have overloads in the wide areas. We just don't really see it. When you've got players like Trev on the right-hand side, he's not really going to be bombing on and overlapping. And really, Cucurella isn't the best at doing that either, really. That's not really his skill set. And if you don't have Gusto, Reece James, Chilwell in the team, and they're not anywhere near match fitness, and even when they are fit, if they're recovering from injuries, overlapping wing-backs isn't the way to go. And you also look at the wingers that we have. Noni wants to invert. Mudryk wants to cut in and have shots as well. Sterling isn't really an out-and-out winger either. He wants to sort of do his little dribbles and sort of tuck inside. Cole Palmer has been playing on the wing. Again, he wants to come inside. So, all of the system at the moment, it's built around either having overlaps or sort of playing narrower, right? And really, the 4-2-3-1 system isn't the best for that. Now, with the tactical tweaks, obviously the midfield area is now therefore a lot, really congested. But what it also allows us to do is push Noni and Mudryk very, very wide, and they can get a lot more space and a lot more joy down those areas. And I have to say, both of those guys in the second half, they looked like they had more space. It was very interesting. Misha wasn't getting the ball at all, and I think that kind of proves everything. We'll get into that in a second. But Noni had a lot of the ball. But you have to say, we have to just talk about the manager for a second. He impacted things significantly and really did help us in the game. And that tactical change basically should have won us the match. And if we're talking about the midfield here, we have to talk about one man in particular, the man of the match. And it was a player that you guys had been telling me that I had to talk about all on my Instagram. And in fact, I put a question up and I asked you who really stood out for you. And pretty much 60% of you all said that Caicedo was the one that I had to talk about. And so I'm going to do it. This guy, I think other opposition fans don't quite see how good he is because they only see the highlights. They only see the goals and the assists. And this guy just does the dirty stuff. I think I was looking at the stats and I think it was 102 touches, 91% pass accuracy, and one of the best slide tackles that I've seen at Chelsea in a very, very long time, which basically should have been an assist when the ball goes through to Noni Madueke. He should have passed, but he didn't. He took the shot and it was a pretty average shot, to be fair. Decent technique, but the goalie saved it quite easily. But that tackle deserved a goal. And I think this player in Caicedo, he deserved the man of the match, absolutely, as I say. But he deserves some overall plaudits. He's been playing in midfield that has been incredibly dysfunctional, being put together. We've had so many injuries. Enzo has absolutely not been fit. Gallagher is up and down. He really wants to play in that 10 role. And he's often left by himself, as I say. But he's just performed so admirably. And I think if we hadn't had him and him playing, near enough every game, I think it's 30 out of 33 games he's played now for us. And at the start of the season, we were only just getting him in. So it just shows you he's been here week in, week out. He's always been available. And you have to say the best ability is availability, as my boy Joey would always say. He's been absolutely immense. And you have to just say, we are going to build the team around him. I don't really care what other fans say. He's just brilliant. And I mentioned this very quickly in the tactical changes, the two wingers. We've got to talk about these guys as well, in Misha and Noni Madueke. Two players that have had relatively interesting stories this season. Misha has been in and out of the team. He's had people saying that he's not really a footballer. Frank Lampard potentially questioning his actual technical ability. And you've also had a lot of people backing him and saying, that he's a really good player. I just have to put my hands up here, and this is the moment that I do just have to say he has not been good enough, and absolutely call me out for it. Absolutely say that I've been chatting a load of shit, because quite frankly, I thought that we'd be seeing a lot more from Misha now that he'd had a run of games, and I thought basically as he would play his way in, he'd be getting better and better, he'd be improving, he'd be building connections with other players. And it's just gone the complete opposite. Like, you look at some of the set plays that he's done recently, some of the crosses and the shots that he's done, they've just been so wayward. And there was actually a moment that you just have to laugh at, to be honest with you. There was almost that Salah moment where he takes a shot in the game against Villa and it basically does nearly go out for a throw-in. And that was so reminiscent of that Salah moment. And look what Salah's done, right? And I'm not saying that Misha is going to do that, but we are quite quick to write off players. Half of Europe wanted this guy, but he really does need some technical one-to-one coaching to improve his sort of footballing brain and his mentality. He does things that we don't really need to be seeing at Chelsea. He tracks back in areas that sometimes he doesn't need to. I respect it, but we don't need to see him there. He does passes that are wayward and basically sort of like petulant sometimes. And he basically does shots again when, he's going for the top bins. I respect it, but, they're not sort of the best chances. So you have to call him out, and I have to put my hands up to sort of say that, he hasn't been good enough, and you have to acknowledge that. Whereas Noni, technically completely the opposite of this guy. Such a footballing brain, so good on the ball, always does do the good things. I think he always does make relatively decent decisions. But mentally, there's something that's just not quite right there now. And I'm not saying that, he can't change this, and I really hope he does. There's an arrogance to him, and we saw this in the penalty incident where he was taking the ball away from Cole Palmer and having a fight with Nicholas Jackson. I hated that, and it put Noni in a really bad light. And I think for me, the biggest thing that I really do worry about him is his overall mentality. And the other thing that I would say about Noni is that he feels like he is quite predictable. Like, he can only play on the right hand side, and all he wants to do is cut in on that left hand foot. In fact, I saw tweets yesterday talking all about, does he even have a right foot? Can he even pass the ball with his right foot? Because there are so many moments where you just go, just try and beat the guy on the outside, you'll still do him. and he still tries to cut inside. So I do think his, he's almost like that Robin kind of style where he will always cut in and shoot on his left-hand side, but he just doesn't do it. So I think there are elements of his game that he can improve. But ultimately, if you're comparing the two players right now, you have to say that Noni does look like he has the brighter future. Oh, and by the way, I still haven't given up on Misha. But I have to say, you look now at the transfer dealings and you look potentially at Sterling leaving in the summer, and I do think we do need to look at strengthening in that area. There's been Williams chat, there's been Angelo chat about him coming back. I think those are all good options, and I think we should look into them, because the wing areas we do need to strengthen, because we need to push every single one of these players to be better. And last but by no means least, we are going to talk about Mauricio Pochettino. I teased this at the start, and we are going to talk about, where this leaves him and what is going to happen in summer, and whether I think he should stay. But before we get into that, if you are enjoying this video, make sure you subscribe, because there's going to be loads more about this. As I say, I'm going to do a whole video analysing Chelsea's problems and getting into some solutions for the future. But we have to talk about Mauricio Pochettino. I think this was one of those games that is almost a bit of an audition for him in a weird way, because it does show that he can make tactical changes and innovations to change the game, and I think he absolutely did that. But I also think he set the team up in a way where he just had to. There were no changes that he could really make. This was the only team sheet that he could really put out. If you look at the bench full of young kids, he's had to do his best, and I do think there are mitigating circumstances around Mr. Pochettino. That's why we've given him such a long rope at the moment, and I basically said to him we should stick with him as long as possible, because he's had so many injuries, he's had so much going against him, he's had young squad that he has to fit together, so many new signings, an entire medical department change, an entire recruitment department change, and he's had to deal with all of that, and he's done pretty well. Now he's coming out fighting. Now he's saying in press conferences, it's not all me, not all me to blame, I should say. It's not all my fault. Look at everything else that's going on. And that can be the start of the end. But I'm not sure if it is with Mauricio Pochettino. But what we must admit, and I'm going to say this as well, this is almost my belief as well, is that if he doesn't get some form of Europe, it's going to be incredibly difficult for him to stay on. If it was my decision, if we finished any higher than 8th, I would keep him on and then give him an immense amount of pressure going into next season. If he doesn't perform in the first 8 games, you can sack him then. It won't really change that much. So let's see what you guys think. I'm really interested to see if you are Poch in or Poch out. I can imagine so many of you after that Arsenal game were very much in the Poch out camp. But yeah, really interested to see what you guys think. I thought overall this game was a very decent one. It showed us quite a lot, and there were some positives to come out of it. We should have basically won that game. The Cole Palmer chance and the push that wasn't really that bad of a push basically ruined it for us. But we've got 5 games now from Mauricio Pochettino to see whether he can continue in the job. And we've got a lot of games coming up for the players to prove that they don't need to be strengthened in the summer. But it's not all about positivity. We need to get results on the table. And these final games coming up are absolutely crucial for us. So strap in, because Chelsea are all over the place this season, and it's going to be a fun one. If you have enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to the channel, give me a like, and let me know what you think about Mauricio Pochettino's career in the comments. And if you do want to support me, check out my website, Aveste, the home of independent street, where we've got some bangers, some brand new drops on the site that you guys are going to absolutely love. Check out the new t-shirts coming into summer. You're going to be able to pick up something you like from there, so check that out. And thank you so much for watching. I'll speak to you in the next one.